I'm getting ready to actually go back to North Carolina. I had obtained the CAT scan copies from the hospital, and I will be mailing them to you. I am really glad that I got in touch with you because, I've been wondering about what's been going on with ETs for years, basically, since I was a teenager. And, I had this opportunity in Los Angeles. My girlfriend is sitting here right now, and I had talked to her about this. And I've known Pam for about 8 years, and I'd like her just to go ahead and give a little bit of character reference to you as far as some of the topics that we have discussed, as she knows me. And I'm doing this now because she's going to be leaving. So I kind of grabbed her aside because I thought it would be good to have, another person verifying who I am and some of my experiences, as she has experienced some of my clairvoyancy firsthand. So this is my girlfriend, Pam Donahue.
Hello. I just wanted to say that I met Colette, like she said, about 8 years ago, and she was working for a tennis club where I worked at as well. And she had a professional standard about her, and she was an artist up at the club making posters. Then we became friends, and she had a child, and I've taken care of her child several times, and now they're living in North Carolina, so I don't see them that much. But we have had a couple of readings, I guess you could call them, where Colette has sat down with not only myself, but with a friend of mine and also my mother, both of whom she did not know anything about, and she was able to say a couple things that surprised both of them, especially my friend, who Colette had never even known existed. She was an old friend that had gone back long before I knew Colette, and she was able to pick up quite a few different things about her life. As far as being trustworthy, I've never known Colette to, speak anything but the truth, so I do trust her opinions and her comments. And some of the things that she has told me, sound a little bit strange and unbelievable, so to speak. But then again, I've not experienced the same things as she has, so I can't exactly relate to them. But I do believe they did happen to her. Whatever they were, I don't know, whether they're ETs or what have you. Okay. Colette's asked me to give you a little bit of an emotional profile. Like I said, when I first met her, I had a lot of respect for her, and she seemed like a very creative person, which she was. And later on, after her childbirth, she did have some difficulties that I went through with her, and she had quite a few illnesses. And she has taken it on herself to more or less find her own method of healing, which I think it has been successful because her physical being seems to have improved. Mentally, I was just discussing with Colette that I feel this particular trip that she's made, she seems a little bit more depressed. And I do know that when she told me about her experiences that one night, she was pretty freaked out, or whatever you want to call it. I thought I was going to be scared about it too, and after I left, I realized that, that it doesn't seem like it's a threatening situation if what is happening is from, extraterrestrials or whatever, and they're not meaning to do harm. Then I don't see any harm in what is occurring. But I do know that it has shaken up Colette quite a bit. Okay, I am concerned about her checking into this, and I must say that I am a bit leery. I don't know you, and I don't know exactly what your organization does, and I've told her to take every precaution she can, so that she is getting, something that's beneficial to her and not something that's going to psychologically harm her or what have you. And I hope whatever processes or understandings that you help her to come to will help her to better understand the situation. I don't believe that she could probably change it, but perhaps she can make it more easy on her, so that it doesn't cause her fear or harm or
Grief.
grief. Well, thank you very much, and
Have a nice
have a nice day.
Hi, Pat. This is Colette, and I'm going to try to work on this tape again. This is the second tape I've actually made, as last year after I read, well, I guess it was in the summer after I read the book Intruders and Missing Times, I had made a tape to Bud Hopkins in hopes of sending it, and then I decided not to do that. And I've gone basically the whole year again trying to figure this out on my own. I got the CAT scan mailed today. Today's Thursday, actually, because yesterday when I went to go mail it, our little town of Black Mountain's post office closes at 12 o'clock. So I wasn't able to get that out as soon as I wanted to. I'm definitely kind of confused about this, because I can't say that I have ever seen any faces, that I have been totally conscious and had conversations with ETs. I know that I've had lots of experiences in dreams. I've had things happen to me when I've been semi-conscious, because at the point of waking up at particular times, I have been paralyzed and know that I was awake, but felt that I was under a form of anesthesia that I was fighting off. Also, so there are things that happened to me that I know have actually happened to me that are not dreams. But there's, I guess this whole thing has come to a head with me because I had been like an orphan looking for its mother, as for an analogy in this situation, because there's just been an obsession to try to find out what's going on, something, give me something tangible that I could relate to, that I might say, yeah, that's it, that's that feeling, that explains all this. I think that's why I picked up those books, to see if I couldn't, relate to anything. I know that throughout the years I have been, any time a documentary or something's come on TV, I've always wished I could have seen it or picked up books and read about UFOs, because I want to find out if there's anything that could help me understand why I might feel this way. Since I was a teenager, I've always felt that somehow there's been a form of mental telepathy or some kind of communication with extraterrestrials in me. I never have known if that's just been something I've created in my mind and fantasized about, or if, because I am clairvoyant, that if there's a possibility that there's extraterrestrials, if there is some form of communication going on, that I just happen to be receiving it. I don't feel like I'm crazy. I mean, basically everybody thinks I'm very intelligent and creative and together, and they see that side of me, but they don't see the side, my inner turmoil that keeps me preoccupied, my conflicts that I have concerning my own sanity about this situation. You said do something in chronological order, and I've been trying to think of the best way how to do this. All I know is my first experience with seeing a UFO was, I was a child, I don't know how old. I was driving from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, which I lived in Las Vegas, and I was on a trip with my parents. And my father said that there was a UFO up in the air, and pulled the car over and got out his telescope from his guns, because he was a hunter. He had a tripod with a lens on it that he used for his guns. And I remember we all getting out and looking at it, and my mom commenting on how another ship dropped out from below that ship and the lights and all that. And I know that we were on Interstate 15 at the time, somewhere out in the middle of the desert, but that's all I remember. I don't know if there's any missing time there. I can't say honestly. I don't think that there was. I just think that it was off in the distance and we saw it. and we all got back in the car and drove off and headed for Las Vegas again. My mom doesn't recall that night what happened either, except that, yeah, we saw one and we got back in the car and drove home. Then later on, I think I was probably about 15, I had a dream that I was in kind of like a small pod with another individual that I knew who is a human being, who was my friend at the time, and that we had landed, like we had crashed on Earth per se, but that they were extraterrestrials, and that they took me into this rock building, or like it was a dwelling that was of earth nature with rocks and stones, and going inside this building and seeing there were symbols on the walls, like they weren't hieroglyphics like Egyptian, but they were some kind of symbols that were etched in the walls, and I had the feeling that I was in a dwelling that was very ancient, but that somehow that there's extraterrestrials there, and I felt like, I know this may sound crazy too, but if a person were to believe in reincarnation, that I felt like that might have been at the time I thought that that was just possibly that there was a recall of a past life or something, because it wasn't on another planet. It was, I can't say where it was, except that it was about extraterrestrials, and I was there, and I was part of the group, and I saw symbols, and I was in this dwelling, and I commented about the dream to my friend, and he had opened up and said, well, basically that there are extraterrestrials, and you know, what did I think of them? I said I didn't know, but I had drawn, I recall I did, although I say I don't remember any faces, I remember drawing a picture at that time of a face, and it did have dark eyes, it did have big eyes, and it had a high forehead. That's all I remember, but I remember I drew ears on this individual, and so these pictures that I see on, like, the book Communion or on Missing Time Intruders, the only similarity is the eyes and the forehead, because I drew ears on mine. I didn't remember that, except in the back of my mind, I remember I drew that picture, and the fellow's name was Steve Longero. That was my friend at the time. And I started having a series of dreams about being on spacecrafts, and at that time I realized I was clairvoyant. And Steve also, I think, helped me realize this, because he was clairvoyant at the time. And Steve was actually in that dream with the extraterrestrials with me, the very first one I had. That's why I had spoken to him about it anyway. But he was clairvoyant, and it was my relationship with him that I realized that I had psychic powers and stuff, and I was probably 15 when I first became aware of this. I think I was 15 or 16, I had my missing pregnancy. I tried to get the records when I was just in Las Vegas, and after 7 years they don't keep the records anymore, so they're unobtainable. I don't remember all the events leading up to it, except I was diagnosed as being pregnant. I don't know why I went in for a pregnancy test. If I had missed a couple of periods, I don't know. All I remember is I was diagnosed as being pregnant. It was set up for me to have an abortion. The day I went in to have the abortion, the doctor said I wasn't pregnant anymore, and it confused him, and I remembered it baffled him so much that he sent me off to the hospital to go get x-rays done on my head, thinking that there might have been a tumor at the time or something, creating my body to produce hormones to put me, to a false state of pregnancy or whatever. But nothing was found, and so I don't remember, except that they just says, well, and they let me go. And I never thought anything of that. And it wasn't until I read one of the books that talked about the missing pregnancies that I even remembered about that. And at that point, I started crying, because at that point I thought, God, if this is real, if I am involved in ETs, and that was a parallel for me, a real strong parallel The dreams have continued throughout the years. That was just the very beginning, when I was 15, dreams about extraterrestrials and spaceships. And I don't even remember all of what the dreams were. But I've had dreams where I know those nights that I've had those dreams, though, I couldn't have been driving in a car because I was in my bed. That I would be driving in a car in a neighborhood, and there would be a spaceship up in there, and I'd be taken up in the spaceship. And I don't remember if I was in the car and the car got taken up or I got taken up, but I just remember having dreams of driving in a car and a spaceship overhead in the neighborhood, and I was with friends and I was taken up. I've had dreams where I have gone through a summer of a series of dreams where I was being schooled by extraterrestrials. This is probably back in 1980 when I started having these dreams, that I was being taught of another culture and another civilization. And the face that I can recall from that dream was of a human type face, but after the lesson ended, I remember in the dream that his face dissolved and it went into a light blue light which went up in the air within the dream. And but it wasn't a monster looking face, it was just a face with longer hair, and it was a man, it was a male figure, and he was basically my instructor at the time. But to wake up from the dreams, I couldn't remember what the lessons were, except I had a feeling that I knew something, but when I knew something on a subconscious level that when I needed to recall it, or at some point that the knowledge would be there for me. And I've had dreams throughout. I just can't even remember all the dreams I've had. I've had dreams where I've been in my backyard as a child, which this dream doesn't make sense to me in the backyard as a child, but I was with my ex-husband in that backyard, and I see a light coming down from the sky. It was a spaceship. It was a round pod, and like a ball-type pod that would come down, and E.T. came out of it, and I walked up, and I was telling Jeff, see, Jeff, I told you they're really here. This is really happening. I want you to know that this is going on. But they're friends, and I had my hand held up in the form of like the peace, not the peace signal, but just my hand, like anyone would say how. And I'd walk up, and I would be fear there. But when I saw the face, I remember seeing that face, and it was not the face with the big eyes. It was a completely different face. I could still see the face in my mind, but when I saw the face, all my fear went away, and I looked at the man in the dream, and I go, I know you. I've been with you before. And it was like I felt this warmth towards him, and we embraced in a hug, and everything was okay. It was like I had known this individual, like I had been with him before, but a lot of times. And I've had dreams where I'd been sitting in the living room with Jeff, but not of any house that I know of, and the electrical functions had gone down, and we were sitting watching TV, and I looked out the window and saw a spacecraft land, and I go, Jeff, they're here, Jeff. And I was crouching by the couch, and Jeff's afraid, and the lights go out, and basically the form was of a light blue light coming towards the window, not a form of a body, but after the spaceship landed, it was a light blue light that came out and was walking towards the window, and then I don't remember after that. I've had dreams this past year of floating in thinking at the time, floating in a horizontal position, going through a house, not necessarily mine, but thinking that, remembering in the dream thinking, they have me and they're taking me someplace, but I can't see them. But my impression was that I was just floating, but I had a visualization of my mother there, so I just think that could be like an imaginary dream or something, and I was telling my mom, see, Mom, they're here. This is really happening. It seems like these dreams sometimes there's people that are close to me in these dreams that I'm saying, look, this is happening, this is really happening to me. Can't you see this? And I want to convince them that this is going on. Like they're part of my dream, but they're not. But the experience isn't happening to me. Happening to them, it's happening to me. But I'm telling them at the time that it's happening to me. And anyway, in this dream, I'm floating, and I'm being taken somewhere. It was like they were picking me up, and there was a couple of them carrying me like if I was in a coffin, but it would just have been my body. But I can't see them. I can't feel them. I can't see them. I just have this knowing that something's going on. I've had dreams where I was on a table in a white room, and it was a long, rectangular, skinny table, and I was laying there, and I woke up, and I looked down on my chest, and there was a sheathing over me of bubbles. And I remember in the dream thinking, wow, that looks like packing material. And I'm thinking, this is a weird dream. But I'm going, no, this isn't a dream. This is actually happening. And I had conflict. Is this a dream? Is this not a dream? No, I'm with them again, but it's okay. It was like there was just an acknowledgement that, okay, I'm with ETs again. And this is happening. But anyway, I'm looking at myself through my eyes on my chest, and then all of a sudden it was like if a person were to believe in astral projection or something. It's like I popped out of my body, and there was an aerial view of me looking down at my body with this sheathing over just my chest area. I've had dreams where years ago I had this particular dream after that series of dreams of being schooled, that I was with a girlfriend and we were in like a house, and I looked out and there was it was like if it would be in a one-man spaceship type thing. It was like a disc, and it moved. It didn't move with grace. It was very right-angled in its movements, and it could move anyway. Any way it wanted to move, it could move it. Just like if you were to take a plate with your hand and move it this way, move it that way. Anyway, it came up to the window, and in my mind I heard, it's time for you to come up now. And I was crouching by the window, and I was just really afraid. And I go, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. And then I wake up. I don't remember anything after that. And and then later on, anyway, this year I've had the dreams where they have shown me different types of aircrafts that they fly in. On the outside, I don't recall too much of the interior, but that they took me to a place up in the mountains where there's a lake. And they say, yeah, we hide in water. And they showed me that they dive down at a 45-degree angle, and like they hang out there. And I've had dreams where there's been major disasters. On what planet, I don't know, but major disasters, and that there would be UFOs up in the sky, and that there would be large groups of people gathered. And I was one of the people that was helping these other people survive this, and I was working directly with the aliens on a kind of like a group level to help these other people for transport or for something new to start. Like it's like the end was the feeling that there was a beginning after the end, but a new beginning. And it's unlike any civilization that is here on Earth now, but it would be like a new life for these individuals. I don't know if it were to be on this planet or another planet. I've had dreams where there's been massive nuclear explosions of spaceships in the sky, and then I've known what to do. I've seen myself in the dreams being instructed to gather certain of my friends and take my child and just gather what I need to survive. And I've had dreams where the night before I'm going, okay, look, you guys, man, if you're up there, you let me know, because this is driving me nuts. And the dream has been that they have shown me really, this is a bizarre dream where I was in a room and there was an older man talking to me, kind of like if he was a psychologist or something, and asking me particular questions about the information I knew about ETs. And then I would look at this readout, like a paper computer type readout, and all of a sudden it was like the ETs giving me all this information. And it was strange looking printing. It was not letters that you'd see. I've never seen letters like this, but there was a language on paper, and when I looked at it, I understood it, and it was technical data type information. It was very technical stuff. But when I woke up, I couldn't remember what it was, and I just thought that was a really bizarre dream, because that was like during the daytime when I was napping, and I don't understand some of these dreams. I mean, I probably have just made up a lot of these dreams in my head. I don't know if they're talking to me mental telepathy, with mental telepathy or what, but I feel like, that I've always felt like there was somebody up there knew I was down here. I've been feeling like I've been monitored, that I'm to the point now of just being paranoid all the time, wondering, if I was safe or not, like when I was going to go to bed, what would happen, because what started happening to me on a physical level was last year. I was out in Chesapeake Bay and camping, and I was just about ready to go to sleep, and this noise just permeated my van and in my whole being, and I didn't hear it audibly, except I heard it within me, and it was like I was just one with this noise that was going, and it knocked my consciousness. It's just like whatever reality I was in at the time or level of consciousness, it knocked me. And I had very acute awareness at the time, and after a while, like a few minutes, I guess it faded back to where I was, my awareness and consciousness had subsided back to the point where of its original origin before the noise had come in. And my first thought was, is they know I'm here, and that was them. I mean, if you could imagine it was almost an electrical noise, but then yet I didn't feel any sparks, except I feel a jolt it centers in my head, and it's like, but in my consciousness, kind of like a zip, and it just knocks me. And anyway, I could have sworn I had locked all the doors of my van that night, because they're usually really careful about that when I'm out camping, and when I woke up the next morning, my side door van was unlocked, and that kind of spooked me, because I was going, man, I'm sure I locked that door. I'm sure I locked that door. There was a time when talking about things that, kind of make you wonder about what's going on. I've had missing time. There was one night, I know for sure that it impressed my mind so much, because I have a bladder condition, and I just don't fall asleep at night. This was a couple years ago, and I was just laying in bed. I lay in bed, and after a couple of minutes, I go potty. I go lay back down in bed. I get up, go potty. There's a digital clock right by the bathroom. Every time I go to the bathroom, I see what time it is. It's 12 o'clock. It's like I was laying in bed, I was reading. Jeff was asleep. I decided I got to go potty. I get up, I walk by the clock. It's 12 o'clock, and I go back down to bed, and I don't remember if I started reading again or if I decided not to read, but the next thing I knew, it was like, well, I got to go potty again, And I walked by the clock, and if anything, a few minutes should have just passed. I mean, I had no recall of falling asleep. It was like I would have known if I would have fallen asleep, because I usually fight falling asleep. It's like I just don't lay in bed and, oh, okay, I'm asleep. It's like, oh, when am I going to fall asleep? Oh, gosh, I'm starting to feel unconscious. Oh, yeah, I'm drifting. I mean, when I walked by the clock and it said 3 o'clock, it jolted me. I just went, wow, where did that time go? I go, wow, I must have just, passed out and not known it. And it wasn't like I was reading for 3 hours, because if I was reading for 3 hours, I would have gone to the bathroom at least 5 times in that 3 hours. So at that point, I just go, man, I must have just passed out. And after that, I didn't think anything of it, except that I've always remembered that as far as like a time warp. And I didn't think about that until I read the books anyway. And as far as any significant value, I don't know if it has any value to it or not. I mean, these are just a lot of coincidences. There's parallels, but I don't know. I could have just fallen asleep. There was another time when Jeff and I were out in the garage, and it was 10 o'clock, and then all of a sudden it was 11 o'clock, and that impressed our minds so much. We both said, wow, it's 11 o'clock. Where did that hour go? And I remember that. I don't know if he remembers that. There's also, I remember about 10 years ago, I was driving to Las Vegas from L.A. I was living in L.A. at that time now. And I was driving in the car with two other girls, and we're driving down the highway. This is also Interstate 15 again. And it's like all of a sudden, and it's at night, and there's this big light just comes sweeping down right in front of the car. And I remember in my mind, I was going, oh my God, it's a UFO, it's a UFO. And then I said out loud, this is it, you guys. With the knowingness like, God, this is it. This is like a UFO. This is my time or something. But then all of a sudden, we're driving, and I'm looking for the light. And it's like, there's no light. Where'd the light go? It was like we're just driving. And I remember that the girls, we talked about, like, wow, that was really weird. Like, where'd that light go? And, God, was that a UFO or what was that? But it was like it came and vanished. And there was something about that particular trip that might possibly have been a time lapse, because I think that I thought it was a little strange that we got into Vegas a little later than we did, but I don't quite remember, but there's a funny feeling. And every time I drive on that highway at night, well, now I live in North Carolina, but this is when I would travel back and forth from Vegas to LA. Every time I drive that